Singers will tell you Balerion the Black Dread was the greatest thing ever to take wing. They'll make a mountain out of his shadow and swear the sun hid from him. Let them have their chorus. I've run my hands over skulls that could shelter a small boat, and I've seen glassy scales big as shields. And I say this, Balerion was not the ceiling, he was the survivor. Before the doom tore the Freehold out of the world, the skies above Old Valyria boiled with shapes your eye has never learned to count. Titans and knives, bells and storms, prisms and shadows, even ice that breathed winter. Tonight I will walk you through the mega dragons and their kindred, the breeds the Valyrians crafted, coaxed, or simply feared. I'll tell you what they looked like, how they fought, what tricks the old blood mages whispered into their eggs, and, most important, how those bloodlines bent and thinned and finally became the dragons we know today. Keep Balerion in your mind as your yardstick. Call him 500 feet of wingtip to wingtip, and measure everything I say against that black horizon. You'll see how many monsters once looked him level in the eye.
Can I stop you for a second? I won't keep you long, but if you love Game of Thrones lore like me, you ought to do one thing. Like and subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it keeps our strength together, free as the wind on the wall.
First obsidian colossi, the fortress-winged titans. I begin at dusk, for that is when the obsidian colossi loved the sky. Picture wings like city walls, turning in slow, certain strokes. Picture scales that looked like fresh-cooled glass, each one veined with a faint red ember. When an obsidian colossus lifted off, the air groaned around it the way timbers groan when a ship leaves the blocks. 520 to 650 feet from wingtip to wingtip, a tenth to a third larger than Balerion. That was the span of the biggest I have record of. They were earth-forged, quite literally. House Malaris, silver hair, purple eyes, and hearts proud enough to yoke a mountain, sang their eggs over volcanic vents, painted the shells with basalt sigils, and sealed the pact with blood-bound earth chants. The result was a dragon, tied to the low, slow music of the world. Their wing beats shook dock pilings. Their flame melted rock into runnels, and their weakness was the very stone song they loved. The wrong note, the wrong quake, and a colossus could turn brittle as glass in the air. The name you must remember is Kaldrax, the World Hewer. He perched on a black buttress over the 14 flames, and could hang there for hours without a flap, balancing on volcanic updrafts like a cathedral on a column of hot breath. The old stories claim a single downstroke blew harbor fires, flat half a league away. Another says his skull became a vault door in a Malaris treasury, cruel, practical, and perfectly Valyrian. Why Balerion wasn't the biggest? Because beasts like Kaldrax existed. If Balerion is our iron anvil, the colossi are the great bells that rang across the sky. How they became today's dragons. They didn't, not directly. The Doom, 102 to 98 BC, sang the killing note through the bones of the peninsula. Colossi shattered midair, black rain over a boiling sea. But hybrid traces lingered. A Colossus queen mated to a lighter sire could throw an egg with Colossus lungs and Balerian's endurance. That is my guess for why Balerion himself could hold noon when his stone-hearted grandsires could not. The mass endured, the petrifaction curse thinned. Second sky shriekers, rainbows with knives for throats, now cast off the weight and give yourself to speed. The sky shriekers were mica-thin glass-boned flyers, 150 to 220 feet across, a third to not quite half of Balerion, with wing membranes so translucent. The sun painted them in blues and greens and rose as they beat. Their bones were latticed like a bird's, their ribs flexed like willow, but it was their throats that made cities flinch. Through selective pairing and sunglass incubation, House Sarmian bred a laryngeal echo sac behind the tongue. When a sky shrieker cried, the sound hit like a spear, cracked tower stones, burst eardrums, and turned a shield wall to chaos before the first lick of flame. I have, in a crystal sandwich on a shelf that only I and the spiders visit, a sliver of Cirithra's wing. Dawn light makes it hum. Yes, hum. Cirithra of the Seven Hues crossed the Jade Sea without landing. Nyrex banked low over Myr and broke every stained glass window in a sept with her shock scream. Light bodies, ruthless speed. But speed hates grit. When the doom turned daylight into an ash storm, the glassy pinions tore, and sky shriekers fell like shattered ornaments. How their blood shows today. Caraxes' scream that strips the marrow from your bones. That is a sky shrieker's music. The razor-keen knife dive of Vermax, a sky shrieker's habit stitched into a sturdier frame. The breed died in the doom, but its edges survived in mongrels who didn't need a glass wing to spit lightning from their throats. Third Embermaws. Walking forges with twin bellies. Where a sky shrieker sang, an Embermaw roared like a bellows. Size, 180 to 240 from wing to wing. A third to a half of Balerion, all chest and throat and jaw. Their secret was two bellies, one for meat, one lined with basalt nodules for lava. House Larian reared them in basalt-lined nurseries, fed their gravid hens ore and their hatchlings slag. When you poured metal down an Embermaw's gullet, scales glowed cherry, and the breath went white at the core, so hot it looked almost invisible, the way desert air shimmers above a road. Pyrothel once refused a broken Valyrian steel blade with molten drool mid-battle, and the blade held. Jalax the Kiln King bathed daily under a lava fall and turned bronze to bubbling with a bored exhale. They would purr at your ankles if you kept them fed and chew through iron if you didn't. The pre-doom tremors filled the vent network. Pits overran. Broods drowned. 101 to 99 BC. You can taste the cruel poetry yourself. The forge smothered by its own fire. What lived on? Not the double belly, too dear for a cold island, but a heat-hardy furnace in the chest. When Vermeether has worked his flame a while, I've seen him glow in the seams like heated metal. That, to my eye, is a thin inheritance of Embermaw blood, carried forward because it helps without demanding a trench of lava for dinner. Fourth Stormclaws, the riders who married the sky. Now to the wind's own children. Stormclaws were 200 to 280, 40 to 60% of Balerion, and they were built like a brawler's chest, with sail ribs stretched along the wing. House Samion kept cliff-line hatcheries, dusted feed with magnetite, and watched for hatchlings who grinned at lightning. They attracted skyfire, then grounded it harmlessly down tail and spine, leaving delicate silver scars that glowed when storms rolled. To ride one, the Samian performed the sky wedding. Shaved scalps, thunderhead tattoos, and a leap off a precipice with arms spread and nothing underneath but jagged air. Trusting the dragon to catch them, initiates dusted their heads with shaved Stormclaw scale so that little arcs would crawl off without killing them. Valeth of the Gale once disappeared into a black squall and re-emerged, wreathed in St. Elmo's fire, tail spines blue and crackling, laughing like a mad priest. But the doom salted the clouds with metal. What had been a lover turned cruel. Lightning stitched nets through the ash sky, and Stormclaws flash-fried in webs of bright death. Their echo in our lines, Sheepstealer haunted squalls and mountain thermals. Caraxes wears storm scars along his neck. The nerves that love a gale are hardy. They found new homes in dragons that didn't need a hurricane to feel alive. Nightworms, shadows with teeth. I lower my voice for the Nightworms out of habit if nothing else. They were 140 to 200 feet, 1/3 to not quite half of Balerion, and soot-matte from tip to tail. Violet eyes that glowed in the dark, wing fringes like velvet to drink the whistle out of air. Their flame looked black, so hot it bent light and made the world seem a trick. They were mostly wild, these. Fringe blood mages found them in echoing caverns and bound riders with 9-night blindfold rites, water and spiced mushrooms until hearing and smell became eyes of their own. Only then would a hatchling accept your hand and let your warmth into its shadow. Umbraxos took a keep without a roar, and Tenebrae snuffed torches across half a league with one sweep. Men swore the darkness had weight, but the doom's ash was glass ground to flower. It abraded the silent fringes, tore lungs from within, and the line collapsed. I have heard whispers of a violet-flecked egg smuggled west. Whenever the cannibal slides up out of dusk without a sound, I wonder if I'm hearing nightworm blood singing very softly through time. What persisted? Stealth, not silence. Caution, not cowardice. A dragon that hunts at dusk, that prefers the backside of a moon, that muffles its approach. Those are nightworm habits on a broader frame. Sixth wave runners, surf, and sky. These were the sea skimmers, 120 to 180 across, a quarter to 2/5 of Balerian, salt grey hides, keel-finned tails, hind legs set far back to steer like a rudder. They nested in coastal grottos and learned to hold a gulp of air in a throat valve for short dives. Their exhale was steam-rich, a scalding fog that blinded crews and split keels when the boiling hit trapped bilge water. They were usually wild coastal clutches, tamed by minor freeholders with fish oil rights and surf fly drills. Volcaro could surf inside a storm swell, riding a glassy hollow like a moving tunnel. Silith the shoal cutter once sank 4 galleys in a single pass by boiling their bellies. Pre-doom, the cliffs began to shake, grotto ceilings fell. Tsunamis ate the nurseries, approximately 101 BC. Wave runners became stories told into wind. But a lighter memory lives in Sea Smoke and his kin. The love of breakers, the quick, skimming agility over water. 7th Sunscales, the prisms that sang. Rarest of the warm-blooded lines, the Sunscales were 160 to 230 feet, roughly a third to half of Balerion. And they looked like light, learning how to fly. Crystal latticed scales in gold, copper and rose. Wings, wide and half-transparent. Bone hollow as reed flutes. They glided for hours on thermals and hummed through bell cavities in the chest. On a silent morning, you could hear a sunscale sing the sky into place. They were bred by rare astrologer sorcerers, some of them early Targaryen kin, in mirror vaults, fed mineral slurries to grow the scale lattices. Aelorix could be seen from Bravos at dawn, a second sunrise gliding over Valyria. And Heliorin was wider than Vagar, but light as gossip. The doom dimmed the day. With no thermals, Sunscales climbed blindly into pumice walls. A few pink-shimmered whispers appear centuries later. Morning beloved of Rhaena, but the choir is gone. What survived? A glint here and there, a humming chest in a small dragon at rest, a fondness for high air on clear days. Pretty traits, fragile ones, carried like heirlooms rather than weapons. Ice dragons, shiver worms, winter's breath with wings. Now we leave the peninsula, for the shivering sea keeps its own bestiary. The ice dragons, or shiver worms, were translucent leviathans with freezing breath, 500 to 650 feet, Balerians equal to his better. I call them cousins rather than kin. No Valyrian ever bred them, and no rider ever mastered one. Mariners tell the same story in a dozen tongues, pale bodies like living glaciers, pupil-thin star eyes, and a white exhale that rhymes rigging, and men in a single sweep. Skyamir the Pale, drifts and then falls like winter. That's the shape of the legend. The ice dragon constellation overhead winks when the real thing rises. Sailors who swear by such signs also swear long oaths when they make harbor alive. Fate. They were thinning long before the doom. Climate shifts, southern hunts, Starvation on the barren routes they swam through the air. The last great flights haunted the nightless sea while Valyria was still proud. After the doom, they were little more than a whisper with teeth. How they touched our dragons? Indirectly. They are a foil, proof that dragon shape flexes to cold as readily as to fire. The old freeholders learned from that shape and bred Sunscales brighter, Embermaws hotter. Competition, imagined or real, sharpens art. Fireworms, magma worms, the furnace below. Strip away the wings and give the earth a mouth. Fireworms slithered through the subterranean ovens of Essos. In bulk, they compare to 130 to 190's worth of dragon, though you'd need a tailor's tape and a death wish to get a true measure. Basalt-chewing jaws, furnace bursts in tight tunnels, and a temper like a stoked forge with legs. They were wild, only ever bait captured by Valyrian miners to clear tunnels or to provide living heat for forges. The handlers told me the Freehold case hardened steel by chaining sedated fireworms beneath quench floors. The metal remembers, they'd say. And who am I to argue with a sword that holds an edge? Gore the tunneler honeycombed a Giscari mine city, then turned and ate the bait train that lured him. Valyria's own tremors and overhunting curtailed the line before the doom. Yet, from such low cousins, the freeholders learned what heat could do to bone and scale. Those lessons burned upward into Embermaw craft and even the keeping of dragonmonts in later ages. Shadow wyverns, kin without fire. 2 legs, venom tails, no flame. The shadow wyverns are not dragons by a meister's strict tongue, but they share a body plan and a hunger and deserve a paragraph in any honest ledger. 70 to 120 feet, a fifth to a quarter of Balerion, living in the basilisk cliffs and Sothorios canopies. Their numbers rose and fell with plague and egg raids. They chitter instead of roar. Their tails carry necrotic barbs that turn wounds black. Night's Hook, a named terror on a certain cliff line, learned to feint with his shadow, stooping from the opposite side, while prey stared the wrong way. Valyrian outriders copied the trick with decoy kites. The Freehold never scaled a breeding program for them, but they took notes. Stealth without flame, stoops out of sun, venom as tool. Some of the nastier anti-fire poisons you read about in the dance, the recipe's grandsire lived in those jungles. The long pivot, how monsters turn into dragons, you know. You've had your menagerie, now listen for the hinge. The moment the door swings from then to now. First, specialization died. The doom wasn't a war with winners. It was a selective sweep. Creatures that needed exact thermals, exact vents, exact weather, or exact rituals fell like wheat. Creatures that could eat goat and ox, roost on cold stone, fly at noon or dusk, and breed without a priest and a music lesson. Those lived. The Freehold's 7 laboratories became 7 funerals in a day. Second, bloodlines tangled into ropes. Even before the doom, Freeholder politics made egg trading a sport. A Malerist prince wed a Samian daughter. Dowry crates rattled with shells. Timarian scions courted Larian girls. Hatchlings swapped cradles. When the mountains cracked, mixed clutches survived best because no single trick ruled them. Third, the Targaryen bottleneck. Enar Targaryen sailed west with a meager clutch and a library of habits saved in human throats. On Dragonstone, without the 14 flames to power extravagance, the family selected for generalists. Dragons who tolerated weather, ate common feed, bred in stone keeps, obeyed without sonic torture. That's how you get Balerion. Colossus lungs, towers heat, tempered by knife-wing endurance. Vagar, broad-spectrum killer with a hard taste for long flights. Meraxes, impact and speed. Think Skyshrieker steel inside a larger frame. Vermithor, Embermaw glow, but on a steadier diet. Silverwing, Sunscale grace without the prism bones. sea smoke, wave runner reflex on a true dragon body. Tessarian, the blue queen, an alchemical flirtation, with flame color, more than a new breed. Fourth, the world itself shrank them, not in every case and not forever, but on average. Fewer herds to feed a giant, cold mountaintops instead of lava lofts, human war that chews through eggs as eagerly as goats. The mega frames vanish because we no longer build ecosystems for them to stand in. What we keep are apex generalists. Dangerous, yes, but possible. Bloodlines in the wild. Threads you can still tug. If you like your lore with receipts, here are the threads I tug when I read a skull. When Balerion breathes, old stone slumps. That's a colossus furnace in a hybrid chest. When Caraxes screams, you feel it in your teeth. Sky Shrieker echo sac on a war frame that won't shatter if a sandstorm sneezes. When Vermithor glows in his seams after long flame, that's Embermaw metabolism without the double belly. When Sheepstealer hunts a stormfront, that's a Stormclaw nerve twitching happily in the rain. When Sea Smoke plays chicken with the whitecaps, that's wave runner balance whispering, down there is also home. When morning hums at rest in the pens, I swear I hear a Sunscale bell tolling for her lost choir. When the cannibal comes up from dusk, silent as a rumor and twice as mean, that's Nightworm etiquette without the manners. Why this matters, and why it will hurt. Balerion wasn't the biggest because he didn't have to be. He was the strongest thing left after the specialists died. The Freehold's best trick was not any one monster. It was range. The ability to shape fire into 1,000 answers. That range became arrogance, and arrogance met geology, and geology won. We inherit survivors, not pinnacles, and we tell ourselves they are the whole story because it flatters us to think the world now is complete. It isn't. The sky remembers bigger. The sea remembers sharper. The dark remembers quieter. And somewhere north where the stars burn blue, the cold wind probably remembers hungrier. If you are breeding dragons, if you even dream of it, learn the right lesson. Don't chase a single perfect trait until the world can kill you with the first different question it asks. Build breadth, tolerance, redundancy. Marry stone lungs to knife wings, storm nerves to calm hearts, and carve this into the lintel of your stable. The environment is your truest rider. Fly with it or fall. Before I send you back to your bed and your safer dreams, I'll set down in simple words the benchmarks your mind will want later. Not a chart, just a whisper you can count on your fingers. Obsidian colossi, 520 to 650 feet, bigger than Balerion. Earth-forged, stone song fatal. Lineage echoes in Balerion. Sky Shriekers, 150 to 220 feet. Glass wings, sonic scream, Cyrithra, Nyryx, speed genes live on. Embermaws, 180 to 240 feet. Lava bellies, white core flame. Zulax, Vermithor's glow says, hello. Stormclaws, 200 to 280 feet. Lightning lovers, sail wings. Valith, storm scars on Sheepstealer and Caraxes. Nightworms, 140 to 200 feet. Black flame, silent fringes. Umbraxos, tenebrae, maybe a cannibal cousin. Wave runners, 120 to 180 feet. Steam kills keels. Volcaro, Silith, sea smoke sings their tune. Sunscales, 160 to 230 feet. Prism hides, bell chests, Aelorix, Heliorin. Morning is the last rosy echo. Ice dragons, 500 to 650 feet. Freezing breath, wild. Skyomere, the north remembers. Fireworms, span 130 to 190 by bulk. Wingless furnaces. Gore, taught Valyria what heat can do. Shadow wyverns, 70 to 120 feet. Venom tails, no flame. Knight's hook, clever, cruel kin. There, a bone tally to go with the stories. And now the fire is low, and my tongue is tired, and the ravens outside are making that noise which means dawn soon. Take your benchmark with you, Balerion at 500. Then imagine colossi above him by 100 feet or more, ice dragons equal to the task, and all the lesser kin nipping and singing and roaring around their ankles. Imagine Old Valyria's sky, not as one dragon darkening the sun, but as a city of dragons, each body a different answer to the same question: how can fire shape the world? The world answered back: sleep while you can. Tomorrow we walk the obsidian buttresses and measure the colossi at the place where the stone still hums. Bring good boots. The past is sharp.